Hallelujah. Let Lord Jesus Christ shine forth. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us. So we are doing live stream little bit early to talk about and then get little bit updates on what's happening with Tommy Robinson. So that's why I am assuming you're all here to hear that or bring your objections, because I can see some people are quite happy that he's in prison. And I have Peter with me from Hearts of Oak. Peace of Christ be with you, Peter. How are you?
It's wonderful to be with you, Hatun. It's always a joy to join you. So thanks so much for the invite. I'm well.
You are very, very polite. Where is your accent from, brother?
Accent from Belfast, but been a Londoner for 24 years now. So a long time.
So you are face behind Hearts of Oak. Would you be kind enough and then just quickly summarize for us what is Hearts of Oak all about and what do you do before we get on what's happening with Tommy Robinson?
I would love to. Thanks, Hatun. We started, it was myself and a friend, Alan Craig, started Hearts of Oak back in February 2020. And it was, we'd been involved in UKIP for 5 years. And we wanted to start something that was like a post-Brexit, because UKIP achieve Brexit in some shape or form. So what do you do after? So we decided an educational organization that would have meetings across the country. So we launched 20th of February 2020. And 2 weeks later, the world went into a lockdown. So we thought, what do we do? And we thought, well, let's maybe start doing interviews. I guess you can do interviews online. So we started that, never having done any. And we've, Alan stepped down after a year. He retired whenever he hit the ripe age of 75. And then I continued. So we've now done probably 235 different guests on close to 800 interviews. We do 3 shows a week, 2 guest interviews and 1 news review every Monday, Thursday and Saturday. And it's just phenomenal connecting with people all over the world and all under an umbrella of free speech. And whether we're talking about US elections or UK or Islam or the whole LGBT debate or et cetera, and it's just become fascinating how God connects us. And I'm sure you know what it's like, Hatun, when God makes connections, relationships, and those are worldwide, especially during COVID, because you couldn't go out, so you connect with people online. So it's been a joy, and we've had a focus on Islam and critiquing that. You've been a guest before, and it's been wonderful to have you on. Jay Smith, Robert Spencer, Bosch, Faustin, the list goes on of great people who understand Islam and the clash that Islam poses to the freedoms we have in the West, or freedoms we thought we had in the West, maybe. So, yeah, it's just been a delight doing those interviews, connecting with people, good friends all over the world, and trying to educate viewers and listeners and supporters on a whole range of topics.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have a very different different channels, and then the way they do things, it's very good. And it's important that while government is handing over our freedom to certain protected people group, that there is still heartbeat somewhere in England. So thank you very much for all you are doing. So Tommy Robinson, it looks like it's just messed up. I've been reading, posts are circulating, and I understand that he's still in solitary confinement, and he wasn't able to make calls, he wasn't able to buy food, all this kind of things. As you kind of read it, it just makes you think something is not right. Okay? So, if I remember correctly, please correct me, that he's in prison right now. Of course, Tommy Robinson is known as the one who exposed the grooming gangs. So you would expect someone who brought attention to crimes going on within decades in England get rewarded, but currently his reward is prison. So he's in prison now, if I remember correctly, that he published, or someone published, a documentary he made which judge said he should not be publishing, and he pleaded guilty and he's sentenced for 18 months. Did I get that correct? Do I remember that correct?
Yep, he's in prison for 18 months for contempt of court because he or someone, I think it was Alex Jones actually released it. But the judge had told him, you're not allowed to release this video. It was released, and he has now been charged contempt of court and is in jail for 18 months for that crime.
Okay. So he said he pleaded guilty, and then he got 18 months. And why he's in confinement? Did something in prison, therefore, like, why he's in confinement?
Why? So he has never asked to be in solitary confinement. When he was sentenced, he was sent to Belmarsh. Belmarsh is a Category A prison for the worst of...
you speak so fast. So Belmarsh is the prison where Amjad Chowdhury and his guns run. It's a very prison, like, kind of, you look at, you say, okay, this is where UK government is training jihadis in this prison. So they put Tommy Robinson in that prison while he's like civil offense. He's done civil offense.
Well, my understanding, never having been charged with these things, and the only time I ever go to prison is to see Tommy Robinson. I went to see him in Belmarsh, and I then went to see him in Woodhill, where he currently is. My understanding is that contempt of court is a civil offence and is a Category D. So was a Category D prisoner. Category A is the highest, the worst of the worst. So rapists, terrorists, whatever you have to do to be the worst. So Belmarsh is a Category A prison. It's the worst inmates in the UK, and I think there are 8 Category A prisons. Then you've got Category B. Woodhill is a Category B prison. And then I guess you've got Category C and Category D. And then you've got open prisons where people can go home for the weekends. So Tommy, as a civil prisoner, Category D, he was charged, he was sent to Belmarsh, and the Belmarsh governor raised his offence from a level Category D to Category C, as I understand it. I believe it was Belmarsh. So he was then a Category C prisoner in a Category A, the top security prison in Britain. Then, after a few days, he was suddenly moved to another prison. His family weren't informed. No one was informed. He was just put in a van and driven somewhere. He was moved to Woodhill, which is a Category B prison. But he is held in the unit. So he is, in effect, held in a Category A unit within a Category B prison. It's a segregated unit in Woodhill for the worst of the worst. And Tommy is in there because he showed a film, which the authorities have decided is the worst of the worst. Okay. So he is, yeah.
So let me understand. So his crime is Category D. First, he was in Category A prison, and the governor of the Category A prison decides, okay, his crime is going to be underlined as Category C. How can she, like, is she allowed to make such a decisions? Like, why she's making that decision while it's not the judge?
The prison governor decides everything within the prison. They have absolute power. They're a godlike figure within the prison, and they can decide anything they want. So whenever Tommy was convicted and sent to court, sent to jail, the judge did not say you must be in solitary confinement or you must have restrictions. All the judge said was you must serve 18-month sentence. Yep. He was then sent to Belmarsh. The governor, prison governor in Belmarsh, has absolute power and control within that prison. And the prison governor decided that his category should be moved to a C. And then after a few days, I assume the prison governor of Belmarsh had contacted the prison governor of Woodhill. This is separate from the judicial process. This is separate from any judge or any court. This is an internal. And suddenly he gets moved to that prison. He didn't request that. He didn't know it was happening. So all of this happens without Tommy's say-so, without any input. And he believed he would have been safe in Belmarsh. He had been in Belmarsh before. Actually, Julian Assange was the prisoner in Belmarsh above Tommy. And my understanding is they used to shout out and talk outside the window of Tommy's cell to Julian above him. And I went to see Tommy in Belmarsh. And suddenly he got moved to a different prison. And he is now in Her Majesty's Prison, Woodhill, and is in the close supervision unit in Woodhill, which in effect is a solitary confinement category A part within Woodhill.
Okay, so I remember it was expressed that the gentleman who murdered 3 girls in Southport was in Belmarsh, and he was practicing his Islamic faith there, making sure he doesn't miss his prayers. And that information was shared with the world by Tommy Robinson. Do you think he's moved after that information is being published, because government has been very intentional to keep the murder of these 3 kids, untouched? Like, not, the government has been very intentional to not share the informations about him.
Exactly. That's how it seems. And I think the person who shared that information was Dan Wootton. Whenever Dan Wootton, the journalist, went to visit Tommy, he didn't have to sign any non-disclosure agreement that I've had to sign and many others have had to sign. So he was free to visit Tommy. He, as a journalist, but he had an interest in Tommy's story. He's not a friend of Tommy as such. So Dan Wootton had applied to go and see Tommy, had been accepted by, I guess, Tommy's family or Tommy's team. And then he went to see Tommy. Tommy shared with him that Axel Rudikabana, who is now being in jail for murdering those 3 girls in Southport, a 6-year-old, 8-year-old, and 9-year-old, that he was in that prison and that he was not in solitary confinement as Tommy was, but he was free to go around and was free to attend the mosque on the Friday, which he did each Friday. And that seemed to have caused anger within the government or within the Ministry of Justice somewhere, that they were angry this information had got out. And to me, it's, you compare, and there may be people watching, there may be people listening who maybe don't have a high opinion of Tommy. I've got to know him over 16 years, and I would stand shoulder to shoulder with him. He's certainly not perfect. He's not a Christian yet. And that's something which the viewers and listeners here can pray for, that he does come to know Christ. But he, so he was there and he shared this information, and yet he showing a film was restricted to solitary confinement. But an individual who was being charged with murder of 3 girls had full freedom of that prison and was attending the mosque. That information had not been public before. And suddenly we now realize, actually, this is an individual who is a Muslim, who has carried this out, who has freedom of the prison. Something doesn't add up there. And that's what made the government angry. And I think that's why they clamped down on people going to see Tommy.
Okay, so currently, like, doesn't matter people like Tommy Robinson or they hate Tommy Robinson, there is something is happening to human being, and that's not just. And if you don't speak it when your turn comes, for example, there is Mohammed in the chat tells me next will be my turn, no one is going to speak for me. So there is something injustice, and Bible talks about we cannot turn blind eye to injustice. So he was removed from jihadist prison to category B prison, which while he just moved to the category C by the governor. Um, I would love to encourage this Belmash governor to just simply stop training jihadis in her prison instead of just like putting people in cells. So you talked about non-disclosure agreement. So currently, if I want to visit Tommy Robinson, I need to get a permission, first of all, and then usually they say because of your media background, you cannot visit Tommy Robinson. So you don't get permission, and then you've got this non-closure agreement. Where that comes from, I never heard that when people go and visit their loved ones or their friends in prison, they need to sign a paper which says whatever I discuss here, I will not share with anyone. If I do so, I will be punished for it.
It's very strange, Hatun, and I've never come across this before. When I went to see Tommy in Belmarsh, I think I maybe went with Lord Pearson actually to visit Tommy in Belmarsh. You went through security. You weren't allowed to bring in anything, so you had to leave your bag and a pen, keys, everything, phone had to be left in a locker. You went through security scanners, like airport-style security. Your fingerprints were taken maybe half a dozen times. Your picture was taken. They had delved into your background, all of that. So it was decided you were safe to go and see him. You hadn't got anything on you that would cause damage or concern, and you were let in to see him. And when Lord Pearson and I went to see him, we sat with him for maybe 2 hours in his cell. He had his cell, and then he had like a table with chairs on the corner. So we sat there and we spoke with him. There is no non-disclosure agreement, and I've signed a non-disclosure agreement in terms of business, in terms of working with companies, especially media space. But going to see someone, and this was a 3-page document to say that anything you saw or heard or learned or observed within the visit, you were not to disclose that. And if you did disclose it, you would not be able to see him again. Now, they're not allowing people to see him anyway. But when I signed that, all the information I have spoken about are things not that I witnessed, but that I've heard. A lot of things I've heard fit in to what I witnessed and understood with my visit with Tommy. But I will honor that NDA because that's what you should do. If you sign something, your word is your bond. But anything I share about Tommy's situation is speaking to many others who have visited him, friends, family, and their understanding of Tommy. And a lot of the information is public on his Twitter feed, on his emails to supporters. So that is all there. But I've never come across a non-disclosure agreement. That means you cannot disclose the information you receive from that. I've never come across that for visiting a prisoner. And maybe I need to talk to Lord Pearson about putting a written question to the government asking how many other prisoners have got a non-disclosure agreement for visitors to them, because I imagine the answer is 0.
Yeah. Well, you can easily go and visit Chowdhury. You don't need that much paperwork at all. And you can put the things on the internet, all those kind of things. Okay, so he's in a category B prison. And if you want to visit him, you need a permission. They check your background, and if you've got any YouTube channel, they simply say no to you. And then if you go through all these things, you just sign a piece of paper, 3 pages, that tells you cannot share anything you see, you heard, and you observed. For example, if you see bruises on Tommy's body, or black eye on Tommy, or he lost like 50 pounds or something, you are not allowed to share that information. So you can torture someone, and then people just come and see and go. There is something just doesn't look right. Why he's still just by himself, and then 23 hours just in a cell? So this is different prison. Why that's the case?
So the prison call it, Lord Pearson put a question down asking the government about prisoners that were in solitary confinement. The government said there's no such thing as solitary confinement. There are segregations, and he is segregated. So he, and my understanding, talking to many others, he is in a cell for 22 hours a day. He is allowed to go to the gym for 2 hours. He is basically escorted to a gym, left there by himself, and then brought back. I have
Yeah.
also heard from other people that some days he is allowed 1 hour walking in the yard. There's an outside yard, I understand, and he's
Yeah.
allowed to walk by himself. But he doesn't have any contact except a guard walking him somewhere, leaving him, and picking him up. That's the only human contact he has. The only other human contact are two things. One is if a visitor comes to see him, that is a 2 hour visit, and that's 3 times a week. Now, the prison authorities are cancelling those very often now, and sometimes those are cancelled the night before. And you have international visitors who have come to the UK to visit Tommy, and they've been told the night before that visit is cancelled. They've no appeal process. They can't complain. They can write a letter to an email address, and maybe in a month or two they may hear back. But there's no pushback. And the reason given are two reasons. One reason is that day is no longer available. You can reapply. Yours, the prison governor. That's it. The other reason is we understand you have a social media profile and you may share information that you receive when you visit him. Therefore, you're not allowed to go. But what is the point of a non-disclosure agreement if they have already decided that you cannot visit anyway? Surely, I mean, Lewis Brackpool, a journalist, went to see Tommy. He refused to sign an NDA, so he was not allowed to go and see him. Where I was happy to sign, I wasn't happy to sign an NDA, but I wanted to go and physically sit with Tommy and spend time with him and encourage him and do what I could do to build him up. My reason was not to write a story about it. If that happened, that would be a bonus, but that was not my reason. My reason was person to person, friend to friend, to actually build him up and encourage him. So I was able to do that. But time and time again, these are getting cancelled. The only other contact he has is with a chaplain. Now, I may or may not have met a chaplain, and yet I see the comment, perfect timing. Now, I may or may not have met a chaplain there. Others have told me that he meets a chaplain who is a very, very good guy. He seems to be a strong Christian, and he regularly meets with Tommy and is going through the Bible with him. He's going through one of the Gospels of the moment, reading that and talking to him. So to me, that is something really positive. And maybe Tommy would not be spending time in the Bible if he was outside. Maybe this is the reason God has him there. We don't know the mind of God. We can never second guess why God does what he does. Sometimes he reveals to us, often he doesn't. And maybe the reason why Tommy is there is for God to reveal himself to him through the Bible, through meeting with his chaplain, through opening up scripture and reading about the life of Jesus in the Gospels. Maybe that's the reason. Who knows? But again, I will say to your viewers and listeners, Hatun, you can pray for that.
Or because he did not fit with the criteria of pleasing the government and pleasing the police, therefore he ended up in prison. So I remember reading that so when you are in prison, food comes and then serves to you. Food is open, so it's not like packed food or at all. Usually prisoners cook it, and like if you know that you are in a prison where majority is Muslim or the cook in kitchen is Muslim, I wouldn't feel that safe to eat that food. So therefore you have access to something called canteen. You just order things from the canteen, chocolate, tuna, like the things in can. I remember reading that Tommy's rights of getting access to canteen was denied for certain time. What is that reason? Do you know?
So you're completely right, Hatun, that Tommy is in solitary confinement because the prison governor says there are prisoners there who may want to do him harm. Well, Wood Hill is 35% Muslim.
Well,
It,
ju-
it,
just a second. If the governor is already thinking there are people who might harm him, then governor should do something to make sure he's being protected. And protecting him is not simply putting him in a cell by himself. You control the people who you think going to attack him. That's a prison. You are the governor. You are paid a lot of money to deal with those things. I find that's like very strange. Oh, for your own protection, you are just going to be by yourself. That's wrong every level. That's not
well,
human thing to do.
well, exactly. So, one, they claim that he is in solitary confinement, which he's never asked for, to protect him from the prisoners. But on the other side, the food, as you mentioned, is made by the prisoners. So if the people are trying to do him harm, then surely you would not allow that person to eat food that is prepared by the people who want to do him harm, because they could put something in it that would hurt him or kill him. And yet, so this is why Tommy went to the canteen or tuck shop or whatever you call it, and all he bought was tins of tuna and mackerel or sardines. He doesn't really buy anything sweet. He bought that, and he's living on tinned fish because he doesn't trust the food that's prepared by the prisoners. Now, the prison governor decided to punish Tommy and ban him from access to that food. So for a week, Tommy didn't eat anything. For a week, he had no food. And the reason they banned him from getting that food was he was on a phone call to a family member. And the family member said, oh, they have his son on the phone. So they brought in his son, this on the phone, this isn't video. They brought his son on another phone, and they put the phone with the phone so Tommy could talk to his son for 15, 20 seconds. That was regarded as breaking the rules. Even though his son is on a list of people he can talk to, my understanding is if I've agreed, Hatun, to talk to you, I can only talk to you. If you have a friend with you and you pass the phone to your friend and they talk to me for 10 seconds, that's broken the rules, and their punishment will have to happen. So Tommy's punishment for talking to his son for 15 seconds was he was not allowed to have any food for a week. That is not an appropriate response, but that was the prison's response. So for a week, he didn't eat anything. And then eventually the prison governor decided that they would be gracious enough to let Tommy once again have food and he could eat again. But it is despicable. And on the phone calls, they're all recorded and they're restricted. So if you're in a prison, you can talk maybe for 1 hour, 2 hours, different times in the day. It's fairly open, and those calls are not monitored. But for Tommy, that was restricted to maybe 30 minutes a day. And all those were listened to by someone working in the prison. So someone in the prison sits and they listen to the whole conversation and write down anything they don't like, and then they can complain. So this has been full on monitored. He's not even allowed privacy to talk to his family. And this is the prison governor, the prison authorities think this is perfectly fine. They don't have any issue with him in solitary confinement for now 132 days in solitary confinement. They don't have any concern of this, despite the fact that legally they can only keep him for 42 days in solitary confinement. Yet what happens after the 42 days? The prison director can just decide we're going to extend it. And after another 42 days, they can extend it. After another 42, there actually is no limit to how often they can extend that. So someone could be in prison for many years, and the prison director could decide they're going to be in solitary confinement for the whole of that time. Where are the rights?
Abuse of power. That's abuse of power. And abuse of power is being practiced simply. I don't think any of those prison officers or the governor know what is Tommy's favorite color. So they are just judging him from what they are seeing in media, and I'm punishing him accordingly, and even crossing the boundaries, overgoing what the judge decided.
Yes, the judge decides, but the prison can do whatever it wants. And there's little that the prisoner can do. So they can have him in solitary confinement. Once it passed 30 days, there needs to be a psychological evaluation. That's been done time and time again. Each psychological evaluation talks about the mental damage and emotional damage that does to the prisoner. That's ignored. And then whenever 42 days comes up, they then just keep rolling it over and keep extending that. And I realize whenever the state has you in a prison like that, they are all powerful. They hold all the cards. They can restrict your access to the world. And as you said, the person could actually be in physical harm in the jail. And yet there's nothing they can do about it because the prison governor of that prison has absolute power and control. Now, there seems to be a difference in the prison with the normal prison guards. My understanding is Tommy has never had an issue with any of the prison guards. They're very talkative to him. They're friendly. They seem to be good people. It seems to be the governor at the top. And whether or not they're making this decision by themselves or whether the government, the Attorney General, is leaning on the prison governor, I would expect they're being pressurized into doing this and forced to make decisions because Tommy is a political prisoner. He was prosecuted, he was tried by the Attorney General. Therefore, it was the government directly that brought him to court, and the government were the ones who put forward the arguments for him to go to jail. So he is a political prisoner. He has been tried and convicted by the arguments and the evidence directly of the government by the Attorney General.
Do I remember correctly that our Justice Secretary is the one who stands on the Hamas terrorist marches and then supports Hamas? Nothing surprises there, as she identifies herself as practicing Muslim. So, if I remember correctly, in prisons, you can meet with the chaplain only for 30 minutes a week. When chaplain comes, because they have to see lots of people, you got only 30 minutes. So he's got chaplain he sees once a week. And then he's got these officers who passes by and then they do head counts, and then they count him, they say hi to him all, and then he's got by himself 2 hours in the gym. If I'm correct, if he's going outside an hour for walk, that will be taken from his gym hours. So he does not have human connection. I'm introvert, I don't like humans, but when you are locked in a place, you want human, you need to talk, you need to, it is essential. Even introverts would feel tortured. So how is he coping just being by himself and having lots of limitations and not free to do very basic things in jail?
He had to prepare himself mentally. He was in Belmarsh, I think, for maybe 4 months. It might have been 4 months in Belmarsh. So this at the moment is an 18-month sentence. He will likely only serve 9 months, but he could serve the whole 18 months. There's nothing that will stop the government from applying the whole sentence. Now you have all the grooming gang rapists. They get out after 50% of their sentence served. But there's nothing stopping the government directly deciding that he has to serve the full 18 months. That would be mentally too much for anyone. It's like kind of what you read in the Second World War, prisoners of war being actually held in a hole in the ground in solitary confinement to break them, to destroy them mentally. Tommy is a very strong individual. God has given him that tenacity, that strength of character and strength of will. And that's why he's been able to stand up against the world really often and stand for what he believes in, despite the media onslaught, despite the lawfare, despite the political attacks. He has been able in some way to take that and weather that. But he's never been, this is now the longest I think he has ever been solitary confinement, or coming up to the longest, which is 4 months. So it's it's anyone's guess how we cope under pressure. None of us know how we cope under a level of pressure we've never experienced before. Um, and for me, I just pray that actually he has that strength within him that will take him through. But whenever he is released, he will be psychologically scarred. He will be emotionally damaged, of course. But he is such strong-willed and he is so focused in what he wants to do, which is to critique Islam and to point out that clash that we face, that Islam is not compatible with the freedoms we have in the West. And he understands that and is focused on speaking of that and of exposing the Muslim rape gangs that we have had. So if it was anyone else, I would be concerned. With Tommy, I've kind of got a quiet confidence that he will actually be able to get through to the end and come out. But again, how damaged he will be as an individual, none of us know until he comes out. And that's going to stay with him forever, that damage. And my concern is that the government then just bring other charges on him, because 18 months in prison for showing a film, that doesn't compute. It doesn't make sense. To be in a Category A prison for showing a film, that doesn't make sense. So a lot of what happens to Tommy does not add up. And I think they will just use more and more issues to actually try and destroy. If this doesn't destroy him, they'll come up with something else.
So in England, we've got now this Terrorism Act. Police can stop you at airports. They can go through all of your things, including your underwears, okay? Including your phone, all these things. Make sure you've got like strong password and you don't give your passwords. And by law, if you don't give the password they are asking you, you are charged under the terrorist offense. That process is like very ugly. The way they search you, the way they go through your things, the way they want to access your very property. Like some people don't even give their passport to their husbands or their wives. The government wants them. So now, if I remember correctly, he's also charged under the That Act because he refused to give the password of his phone to the officers at the airport. Where is that going?
So you're right. This is a piece of legislation that gives the police absolute power to detain anyone they like, and you lose all your rights. Yeah. And Lord Pearson actually,
you can't even call lawyer. Yeah,
I know. So and when I talked to Lord Pearson about this, he was very concerned, and he said to me, we need to ask the government about this abuse, especially of journalists, and how this is used. And I had a friend on a month ago, Callum, who does travel logs. He travels the world and films in all different strange countries. He's done Afghanistan, Zimbabwe. He was in El Salvador. He was in Russia. And he came back from El Salvador filming there. And he was stopped at Gatwick. And he was held for 5 hours. And he was questioned. He makes travel shows. What is it about traveling that, and yet the government had him on a list, a watch list. He was stopped. He had to give up everything, all his film equipment, his camera, his microphones, his laptop, his phone, all his SD cards, his flash drives. Everything was taken. No access to a lawyer. And you have to answer every single question. You cannot just choose not to answer a question. Everything had to be answered. And I'm really concerned how this is being used, especially against journalists. So Tommy said, I can't give you access to my laptop or phone because I've got privileged information. I've got conversations with girls who have been raped, part of the grooming gangs, and I don't trust the police. And they give sensitive information. As a journalist, I cannot give you access to that information, which is correct. As a journalist, he can't. And yet it seems journalists have got no protection. So if the police want to access a journalist, then they can stop that journalist, force them to give all their information, and the police, who maybe could be part of an investigation the journalist is running, they now have access to that. And this is what Tommy was stopped. He said, I can't. Therefore, I believe next week is one of the hearings for that. And again, with all this, I would be really concerned, except God has brought a Cyrus into the situation, and that Cyrus is Elon Musk. I remember on the 1st of January looking at my phone, and Elon Musk had posted Free Tommy Robinson. And I looked at my phone and I thought, I must be dreaming. I must be still asleep. This is so strange. And then we had Elon Musk shining a spotlight on not only Tommy as a prisoner, but on the grooming gangs and what had happened. And that was a phenomenal way that we had a conversation about this that has sadly died down now. But anyway, that was the richest man in the world, one of the most powerful men in the world, highlighting abuses in the UK. And because of that, Tommy has shared this publicly, or his team has, that Elon Musk is funding his fight against that terrorism act and his fight against solitary confinement. So with all of these things, you need a lot of money to go up against the government. And maybe they've picked on the wrong person, who now has Elon Musk highlighting his issues and shining a light on that and putting funding in. And Elon Musk came shortly after Jordan Peterson had had interviewed Tommy, when Jordan and Tammy Peterson interviewed Tommy twice. And I think that made Tommy more mainstream, more accepted, because in the UK, you talk to people about Tommy Robinson, especially in important circles, and they're very afraid, and they say, no, I've read in the newspaper XYZ. When you go abroad... Yeah, but when you go abroad in Europe or America, it's very different. People don't see Tommy through the prism of the Daily Mail or the Telegraph or the newspapers. They read about him in different ways. So
I think the main reason for that is because people look at their kids and then they say, I don't want my kid to get raped. I don't want people to put nail on my tongue of my kid. I don't want my kid to used as a prostitute. People concerned for their loved ones, versus in England, that is kind of in heart beating steps. It's like about to die. We don't have such a concerns. We just like, you try to care for yourself. That's it.
No, I agree. I agree. And there's a fear of stigma, and the stigma of being called Islamophobic or racist because you speak up. And that's what was the issue that kept the whole conversation about the Muslim rape gangs actually quiet, because many police officers have said they didn't want a race riot. That was so you keep quiet, you let the abuse continue, because you decide that the young white girls that are being raped, they are less important than the Muslim Pakistani rape gangs. And the police made a decision, and no light's being shown on that. But thank God for Elon Musk and Jordan Peterson and others like that, who have actually highlighted not only the grooming gangs, but Tommy's situation. And because of that, you've got people all over the world now asking, why is an individual who showed a film in jail for 18 months? Whenever you've got members of these grooming gangs that actually go to jail for 4 years and get out after 2. This is a messed up judicial system that we have. The world can see it. Sadly, our government and still our media can't see it.
I put on the screen, someone put the details of the prison of Tommy Robinson. So you can send letters to, I didn't check the things. I'm assuming it is correct information. Just beware when you send letter to prison, they are being read, and sometimes even they kind of cross over the things you say if they think person who is receiving the letter should not read those things. Just beware of that. Write it with a conscience that someone who doesn't like Tommy Robinson's receiving letter is going to read that letter. So just beware of that.
And the postcode, again, you can, if you just Google it, as I've done, it's MK4 for Milton Keynes is the area, MK4 4DA. So that's the postcode, MK4 4DA. But if you just Google Wood Hill Prison address, it will come up. And do send. All those are checked, but every few days he gets just a huge bag of letters. And the last time I know in Belmarsh, he just had all the letters all over his wall. He read them, and that will give him hope. So if you want to, I would encourage the viewers to maybe take some time, write a letter, put your thoughts, and it's one way you can support Tommy. And again, as Hatun said at the beginning, we should all be concerned, because if they come for Tommy and people won't stop the prison authorities and the police and the government, then they'll come for anyone else. So we need to draw a line and stand up for those we feel are being treated unfairly in the UK.
So when you are in solitary confinement, you don't have the very basic so-called privileges like talking to others, watching TV, all those kind of things. So that means you don't have access to the books from the library you want to read as much as you can. So there will be only limited amount of the books. So it is always such a privilege that you are opening a letter, someone from who you don't even know who it is, but like there is something you can read it. Like it's very like kind of speaking to like another person, because you don't have access to other human beings. So receiving letters are very, very helpful.
I agree. And he is allowed to watch some TV, and then it's restricted. Again, It's up to the prison authorities. So they cut off GB News because they decided he watched GB News. They saw he watched GB News, so they cut that off. So they do anything spiteful to punish him. But again, if you write letters, keep them upbeat. Remember, he is in a difficult situation. So if you can provide hope and upliftment by what you say, then do that. Don't complain to him how frustrating and bad it all is, and reform, and how all the fights are happening, and mass immigration. And write a letter that's positive and upbeat, and share something good with him to encourage him.
Like send Psalm 23, send Bible verse, or just talk about how the weather is, how it make you feel stuff. I'm surprised to hear. I'm not surprised. I'm disappointed to hear that the governor decides which channel you can watch in prison.
Yeah, that's absolute control.
I know Amjam Chowdhury spends hours to do Quranic conversation, jihad conversation with people. I know how they reach out and then stream their things. Versus governor tells you what channel you can watch and what channel you cannot watch. It seems to me, this is what I think. Of course, I might be wrong. There is someone up there decides how to break that person down. You enjoy that, I'm gonna take that from you. You want to know what's happening in real world, I'm taking that from you. So you are just by yourself, wait your death. So we are not I'm not Elon Musk. Lots of people are not Elon Musk. They don't even have like one of 10 million of what he has. But some of us has platforms, others don't have platforms either. What can we do besides sending him letters or emails? What are the practical things we can do in such a situation where we see a human being is simply treated unjustly?
I think the first thing is you don't remain silent. We all have some kind of social media presence, whether you have 10 followers on your Facebook or 1,000 on X, or you post videos online on YouTube, or we all have that kind of online. So I think one, you can share what you come across. Share when you see a story, if you're following Tommy's X account or anyone else's, or you see a video about it, then actually just copy and paste that and maybe send it to some friends, WhatsApp it or message it to some friends. I think it's about having the conversation. And I remember when I was getting a train, this is maybe 5 years ago, I was getting a train in London and I was on my phone and I'd been messaging Tommy, and I then put my phone down. The person beside me said, "Sorry, mate, but was that Tommy Robinson, as in the Tommy?" The train was packed. I said, "Yeah, there was Tommy." He goes, "No way, you know Tommy." I said, "Well, yeah." And then he shouts over to his friend, who's like 6 people along, "This guy knows Tommy Robinson." And then they start having this loud conversation in the carriage. And you realize that there are we are told what people think. We are conditioned by the media. This is what's acceptable. This is not. That is not necessarily true. And we've seen during COVID, or even as Christians, we're told, be embarrassed about sharing your faith. Don't do it. Other people don't want to hear it. Other people do want to hear positive stories. And break out of that mold. Don't accept what you're told is acceptable and is the right thing to do. Do what you feel is right, and share a story about Tommy with friends and family. Anyone should be concerned at an individual held in solitary confinement for showing a film, while someone who is accused of murdering 3 girls has full reign of the prison. Something is wrong. Share that. Write a letter and tell them about something positive, something good. Share your testimony if you want. Tell them how you became a Christian. There's power in that personal story. And pray for them. To me, those are the things that we can do. You share stories you come across, and Tommy, good stories. Urban Scoop is the kind of media company that he's kind of worked with, or follow him online and just share what you come across. And pray for him. I think those are the things we can do. As you said, we're not all Elon Musk. We could, and I wouldn't even say to send money to the things, because some people will. But yeah, just support him by sharing the stories and by praying.
Yeah, thank you. Rami, doesn't matter he's gangster or criminal, doesn't matter. He's in prison right now, and he must have exactly the same rights with other prisoners. He must have a full access to the full inmates in prison, full access to the library with other inmates, full access to the canteen with other inmates, gyms, library. Those are very basic things in prison. People go to prison and then they come out of prison with PhD or a master degree or education. Very basic rights are taken from him simply because governor, one person decides what Tommy Robinson can do it or not. Doesn't matter criminal or not criminal. He should be treated equally, and he shouldn't be starving in prison. They've got like rules. You've got to eat certain amount of carbs and protein, all those kind of things. But those very basic access are taken from him, and that is wrong. That doesn't matter he murdered millions of people or he's just there because he swear at the mosque. He's supposed to have exactly the same rights with other prisoners. That's very basic things. Okay, we can pray, keep him in our prayers. We can send him letters, and then use the platforms we have to bring attention to the unhuman things are being done to him. Inhumane things are done to him. Anything else you would like to bring our attention regarding Tommy Robinson?
Not really. The whole story around Tommy just is so interesting. That whenever he saw what was happening with the grooming gangs, probably around the year 2000, I think maybe 2001, he started raising issues of what was happening, and he's been attacked and maligned for that. We now have a media who have told us how awful it is in many towns, and over 40 towns in the UK. We've had 75 plus trials, I think maybe 80 trials, of 500 individuals who have been charged for this. When Sarah Champion, the Labour MP for Rotherham, talks about up to 1 million girls being affected, this is a stain on on the history of Britain. Lord Pearson has talked about at least 250,000 girls. These are huge numbers. And Tommy has been willing to stand up and speak and to be subjected to huge abuse because of it. Imagine maybe he wouldn't be in that situation if many of us had been vocal on this issue, but we were told it's not acceptable, it's not polite, you don't talk about that, you'll cause offense. Tommy doesn't really worry about causing offense. He wants to do what is right. And maybe that's one thing we can learn from all of this, doing what we believe is right and not worried about causing offense. Jesus never worried about causing offense. He actually spoke the truth, whether people accepted it or not, however people received it or not. He gave it in love, but he also spoke the truth and never shied away from it. And we should want to speak truth more than we should be worried about causing offense.
Thank you. Bible in the book of Amos talks quite a lot about we cannot turn blind eye to injustice. We cannot turn blind eye to injustice. Peter, thank you very much for joining me and giving us quick updates on what's happening, and also what can we do about what's happening to Tommy Robinson. Really appreciate. I will put the link to your channel in the description for people to check it out, follow you or not follow you. People have freedom to choose. We have freedom here. Some people in jails, they don't have such a freedoms we have here. So anything last words?
No, Hutton, it's always a pleasure joining you. I have a huge respect for you as you speak truth on Islam, despite the consequences that you have had. And you're an example, as we've talked about Tommy for an hour, you're also an example of someone who's willing to speak truth, no matter the consequences, because we're all given a role, we're all given a calling, and it's whether we accept that or not. And you have, Tommy has, and that's an example to us all to accept the calling God gives each of us.
Thank you, brother. Thank you very much for joining me, as well as thank you very much everyone who joined us in the chat. By God's grace, we will see you in a couple of hours with live stream with Robert Spencer on Surah 4. God bless you all.